Hey guys, what's going on? This is Lucas here, and if you're a subscriber, welcome back. This is going to be a short video, but I'm in front of the camera again. So, what I want to talk about today is my first impressions on Survive the Night by Riley Sager. Now, this book, I've only gotten 40 pages into it. I think it's about 300 pages long, so I'm going to be spoiling up until that point, but it really doesn't matter because the story hasn't kicked off yet. Basically, it follows the story of Charlie Jordan and Josh Baxter, these two people in 1991 who have to have a joint ride and go back to Ohio from the college that they're at. I think it's called Oliphant University. And the reason why Charlie wants to go is because her roommate and one of her best friends, from what I gather, Maddie, she died at the hands of a serial killer. And that is made abundantly clear, well, not a serial killer necessarily, but a stranger. And that is made clear in the beginning of the story. Now, what I like about this story is that it goes from past tense in the beginning to present tense. That way, you can't really cheat and determine what the ending of the story is going to be. My mind automatically does that, so that's a bit of a problem on my end. So I'm glad. And I don't see prose written in such a way that often. Usually it's either all past tense or it's just, the same narrative you see anywhere, whether it's a Star Trek novel or a fantasy novel, just, the standard fare. This is not the standard fare. This is really cool, actually. I like this sort of in-the-moment, present tense narration going on and talking about Charlie's experience. One thing that I do also like about this, that's part of my first impressions, is that Charlie is shown to be an unreliable narrator. Because since her parents died, that's another thing, her parents died. Again, these are not spoilers, you learn all of this stuff in like the first 20 pages. But her parents are dead, and they died in a car crash in the middle of the woods. So I'm sitting here thinking, they didn't just fridge her roommate, they fridged half of her whole damn family. Because that's three people related to the, in proximity to the main character who are just dead straight off the bat. So Charlie is an unreliable narrator because she has experienced a ton of trauma from her parents dying and from Maddie dying. So what ends up happening is she has a little psychological condition where if she doesn't take medication, she starts seeing hallucinations that are like movies playing in her head that make life like more fearful or more exciting or like film noir, I just read. And so I really like that as a narrative device because it means that anything could happen, and you're not even sure if Charlie is in the right state of mind. So where I'm at in the story right now is Charlie and Josh, they did a sort of joint ride, and so they're using Josh's car, and they're driving over to go back to Ohio to, split costs of gas and do a 6-hour drive, and that's the story. So it's hinted that this guy Josh might be a serial killer, but I'm hoping that they go further with that and use the unreliable narrator as sort of a branching off point so that I can be in suspense about what's going to happen. Because for all I know, Charlie and her unreliable narration and the movies in her head could be responsible for any of the things before. It could be why she's blocking out details about her roommate's murder. It could explain reasons why things seem more tense than they actually are. So through her lens, it's difficult to tell how reliable it's going to be looking at Josh as a possible serial killer. I'm imagining what's going to end up happening is that Charlie's going to continue on this ride, and then the things that Josh does are going to get increasingly more suspect. And then Charlie's going to become increasingly more stressed on top of that. So I think there's going to be an overlap between the movies in her head and what is actually happening to her in the car. And so that'll be very interesting once that comes to a head, if that leads to a conflict, which I'm sure it will. But yeah, what do I think about this book so far? I really like it. I haven't read a good thriller or a good mystery or a good horror novel in a very long time. And it's kind of funny that this takes place in 1991, so that the modern conveniences we have of calling somebody using a smartphone, using GPS, using technology that we have readily available to us now wouldn't be possible back in 1991. It's the same thing with the Goosebumps stories. Like, half of the Goosebumps stories wouldn't even happen nowadays just because an iPhone exists. So, hearing about this story and reading it in the frame of the 90s is really interesting. It kind of reminds me of Stranger Things in that way as well, because it's just one of the reasons why they set Stranger Things in the 80s was because technology would just ruin the narrative devices and the narration of the story of Stranger Things, because we have so many conveniences, and there's just been an explosion of technology in the past 20-30 years. So that makes sense why they block off specific eras and decades to put these stories in, because it just makes it easier than just saying, oh, by the way, this isn't working, by the way, that's not working, by the way, the phones are out, by the way, an EMP ripped your GPS apart, something like that. So if you restrict yourself to a decade, then you can kind of just hand wave that away. So I quite like that, and I like the escapism into the very rad 90s. I haven't encountered any like super cool, super rad references in the book, but I hope that they come up soon. If there's not a reference to like a blow pop or a really dangerous metal bracelet, then I'm going to ask for a refund. But yeah, those are my first impressions. I'm going to update you guys again later on what I think about the book in its entirety. I'm probably going to do a read-along with like full spoilers and everything like that. So, keep a sharp eye out for that. And yeah, with that out of the way, I hope you guys have a fantastic day and that you're all staying safe. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment if it catches your fancy. This is Lucas, and I'll catch you later.